On this Friday night, pandemic parallels. Trump's trade war triggers market mayhem not seen since the COVID outbreak.
President Trump has done what only a virus could previously do.
The warnings of what's ahead. The economists and world leaders stumped by Trump.
That formula is a formula that would have been laughed at in high school.
And how it's the butt of late-night comedy.
Who's ready to learn how to make their own iPad from scratch?
The Liberals plan to beef up the CBC. Why Mark Carney says the public broadcaster needs more money, in stark contrast to the Conservatives' goal. And time's not up yet. The new deadline for TikTok to find an American owner or else.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Colleen Christie.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. The global trade war is escalating tonight between the world's two largest economies. China is striking back at the U.S. with matching 34% tariffs on all imports from America. On Wednesday, President Donald Trump unveiled steep 34% tariffs on all Chinese goods imported into the U.S. Since then, stock markets around the world have plunged. The Nasdaq alone fell more than 20% from its record high in December. The price of oil also took a hit, sliding to its lowest level since 2001, and it brought down Canadian energy stocks. We'll get more on that in a moment, but we begin with Jackson Proskow and the move that's fueling fears of a global recession.
The market freefall accelerated as China struck back at U.S. tariffs with a reciprocal 34% duty on American-made products. Instead of changing course, President Donald Trump spent the day on the golf course, leaving it to his cabinet to play defense.
Their markets are reacting to a dramatic change in the global order in terms of trade.
So dramatic, the chair of the U.S. Federal Reserve warned the fallout would be significantly worse than expected.
We face a highly uncertain outlook with elevated risks of both higher unemployment and higher inflation.
The Economic Policy Uncertainty Index, a measure of financial worry, hit levels not seen since the COVID pandemic. What does this tell us about how people are feeling about the economy right now?
This is a moment of utter chaos. President Trump has done what only a virus could previously do, which is impose those levels of fear and uncertainty all around the world.
Where's the bottom? How will we know where the bottom is? And how does this play out if we keep seeing countries retaliate against these U.S. measures?
That's the point. We don't know where the bottom is. This is not a well-articulated strategy, and as far as I can tell, doesn't really get us very far.
Trump Thursday insisted there is a strategy.
The tariffs give us great power to negotiate. Always have. I've used them very well in the first administration.
Friday, he posted that he spoke to the leader of Vietnam, which faces a devastating 46% tariff on exports of clothes, shoes, and electronics to the U.S., but there's no deal yet.
Until the president finds a way to take some of these tariffs back, I think we're going to have a bunch of really bad days in the stock market and even worse days in the economy.
One of the largest economies on the planet is now cut off from the rest of the world, with the tariffs effectively serving as self-imposed sanctions on American consumers. Jackson Proskow, Global News, Washington.
The Trump administration is giving another lifeline to TikTok, despite Washington viewing it as a national security risk. It's granting the Chinese-owned social media app a 75-day extension to broker a deal, possibly with an existing U.S. business, to give TikTok an American owner. Tonight, ABC News is reporting Walmart is entertaining an offer for TikTok. Despite the economic chaos, new data suggests U.S. job numbers are improving for now. According to the U.S. Labor Department, around 228,000 jobs were added in March, nearly double the number added in February. Unemployment only ticked up slightly by 0.1%. Economists caution the data does not yet reflect the long-term impact of Trump's trade war. And that didn't stop the president from claiming on social media that his strategy was already working. It's clear whatever calculus Trump is using to justify these tariffs, many economists agree the math simply doesn't seem to line up. And that's only adding to the chaos that's causing markets to plunge and uncertainty to rise. And Gaviola has the latest on the economic impact of Trump's trade war.
I think it's going very well. We've never seen anything like it. The markets are going to boom, the stock is going to boom, the country is going to boom.
Trump's assessment of his tariff strategy differs from what most economists see. This will be a disaster if these tariffs are in any way lasting. It's very difficult to listen to, essentially what are falsehoods and half-truths.
Stock markets tanked for a second day in a row as tariff uncertainty rattled investors in every corner of the world. Skyrocketing concern about the future of the global economy and corporate profits. On social media, Trump says his policies will never change. This is a great time to get rich, richer than ever before. And he may be onto something because analysts at Wall Street firm J.P. Morgan just boosted the odds of a global recession to 60%. And historically, the rich become richer during economic downturns.
We are at a level now of U.S. trade policy uncertainty, which is essentially off the charts.
Canada isn't immune. Tariff uncertainty hammered consumer and business confidence, causing employers to hold off on big decisions like hiring or expanding. The economy lost 33,000 jobs in March, the biggest loss since 2022.
This is the first month where we've seen real cracks starting to emerge in the labor market. Ontario, Alberta hit harder than most, and they're very trade exposed.
Researchers warn tarifflation will push up the price of many things, from phones to new and used vehicles. One silver lining is that all this uncertainty can drive down the cost of borrowing. Good news for those with mortgages up for renewal.
Most economists expect the Bank of Canada to cut its benchmark interest rate by 1/4 point on Wednesday. But if the stock market sell-off snowballs or things escalate, the central bank may be forced into a larger reduction. Colleen? And Gaviola, thank you, Anne. Despite avoiding new tariffs this week, Canadian dairy farmers are still on edge. Donald Trump has repeatedly said Canada's supply management program is a major problem in the U.S. Canada trade deficit. All of the major parties say it is not up for negotiation, but as Mike Armstrong explains, dairy farmers fear that could still change post-election no matter who wins.
It's not much about nothing, but it is much about not a lot. Dairy, out of all the trade that crosses the border between Canada and the U.S., is only about 1/10%.
We're not treated well by Canada.
And yet it does seem to be a major bone of contention for the U.S. president.
250% for dairy products. Tariff.
Now, there are some major problems with Donald Trump's figures, including the fact no one pays those tariffs. They only kick in on products like milk, cheese, and yogurt at a certain threshold. Below that, there are 0 tariffs. And the threshold hasn't been hit yet. But having Trump and his administration complain over and over about Canadian dairy,
we buy grain corn,
has farmers like Jason Erskine uncomfortable.
Well, it's all half truths and just not true at all, a lot of the things he says.
Erskine's farm milks about 230 cows, efficiently, he says. Canada's supply management system limits his production, but also provides a stable price. The potential tariffs on foreign dairy products, sort of the third pillar of supply management, protect against Canada being flooded with American product.
If you don't maintain the industry, then you're going to rely on the Americans feeding us. And I think this last 2 months, I don't think we want to be relying on the Americans for anything, especially food.
Now, what makes many in the industry nervous is, again, its lack of size. The fear is Ottawa could drop its protection of dairy producers to protect bigger sectors of the economy. The automobile industry, for example, employs more Canadians.
That's one of the weak points of supply management. It's getting hard to defend as an exporter.
Now, there is one last thing Trump may be missing. Even with the quotas and potential tariffs, U.S. exports to Canada over the last 4 years grew by more than 50%. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
The future of Canada's national public broadcaster was top of mind on the campaign trail today as Liberal leader Mark Carney pledged to boost CBC and Radio-Canada's funding if elected. The plan includes developing a new mandate for the public broadcasters, which Carney called crucial to protecting the country's sovereignty in the face of U.S. attacks. As Mackenzie Gray reports, the plan comes in stark contrast to what's being proposed by his main opponent.
It's an essential stop during any election.
Bonsoir, Monsieur Carney. Merci d'être
a sit-down interview with Radio-Canada, something Mark Carney and the rest of the party leaders did Thursday night. The Liberal leader using it as a springboard to pitch his plan for the public broadcaster.
Our plan will not only strengthen CBC Radio-Canada, it will strengthen our communities that rely on it. It will make Canada strong.
The Liberals promised to increase CBC Radio-Canada's funding by $150 million annually, attempting to tie together a stronger CBC as a defense against Donald Trump.
Right now, our sovereignty is being threatened by the United States. Protecting Canada's distinct identity has never been more crucial.
Despite CBC's $1.3 billion budget, Carney labelled them as underfunded. Compared to the UK's BBC and ABC in Australia, the CBC does receive less per citizen.
We're going to defund the CBC.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre plans for CBC to get even less, with his long-standing promise that he would defund English CBC but keep French Radio-Canada.
My approach won't have an impact on Radio-Canada.
How that would work is not clear, as both organizations share substantial resources across the country.
I actually have. Sorry, false information. Is this the CBC managed to get in here again?
Poilievre and the Conservatives have routinely attacked the CBC and its journalists, cheering on potentially closing it.
It just warms my heart to think of the beautiful U-Haul truck rolling up with a wonderful family in it to move into their wonderful new home in the former headquarters of the CBC.
But remarks like that on the campaign trail have been few and far between, with Poilievre not playing up, wanting to shutter CBC, a political wedge the Liberals are attempting to use.
Instead of defending them, Pierre Poilievre is following President Trump's lead and taking aim at our institutions like CBC Radio-Canada.
Mark Carney's proposal to revamp the CBC will include no limits on advertising, Colleen, a departure from a plan that Justin Trudeau had to ban ads during news programs.
Mackenzie Gray, thank you. The Liberals have dropped another candidate over controversial remarks made in the past. Today, former Alberta MLA Rod Loyola confirmed he was removed as a candidate from an Edmonton riding because of a video from 16 years ago where he appears to praise Hamas and Hezbollah. Loyola says he condemns Hamas. He now plans to run as an independent in another riding. And the Conservatives have booted their fifth candidate. Today, the party confirmed it's dropped Quebec candidate Simone Payette. This comes after Payette made online taunts against Liberal candidate Nathalie Provost, a survivor of the 1989 École Polytechnique massacre, accusing her of playing what he called the victim game. Today in Quebec, the Conservative campaign focused on combating domestic abuse. Pierre Poilievre made new vows to impose stiffer penalties and criminal charges on offenders. The Conservative leader's pledges to protect women and children come as polls show he's struggling to resonate with female voters. Taria Isri reports.
Joined by domestic violence survivors, Pierre Poilievre vowed to do more to prosecute their perpetrators.
That's what it means to put the rights of victims first, to put Canada first, to put our future first, for a change.
The Conservative leader wants to see stiffer penalties for abusers, like creating a new criminal offense of assaulting an intimate partner, bringing in the strictest possible bail conditions, including ankle bracelet monitoring, and treating the killing of an intimate partner or child as first-degree murder. Karine Blow is a domestic abuse survivor and runs an association helping others like her. Up to now, the Conservatives are the only party speaking up for us, she says.
If you then take the criminal code...
This criminal defense lawyer insists the new rules won't hold up in court.
It's clearly a political move and not one that's soundly based in law.
Poilievre's tougher penalties are likely part of a strategy to appeal to more women.
If they're going to, make a bit of a recovery here, get a final push and get back up into a tie or a lead, that's going to be really important, is resonating with female voters.
An Angus Reid poll this week shows the Liberals with a 19-point lead over the Conservatives among women. And Poilievre has faced criticism on the campaign trail for this comment.
We will not forget that young 36-year-old couple whose biological clock is running out faster than they can afford to buy a home and have kids.
Since becoming Conservative leader, polls show that Poilievre has struggled to connect with women. Closing that gender gap will be key to an election victory. Colleen?
Taria Isri, thank you. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh visited Montreal today.
Canadian landmark, the single factory in Canada.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Singh toured one of Montreal's famous bagel shops and pledged to close loopholes that allow corporations to move money into offshore accounts. He would also make companies provide a genuine business reason for having offshore accounts and end tax agreements with countries including Bermuda. The NDP says Canada loses out on $39 billion a year in unpaid corporate taxes. The South Korean president's impeachment upheld. Coming up, how the decision is dividing the nation and the harsh sentence he could get. In central Ukraine, at least 16 people, including 6 children, were killed in yet another Russian missile strike that leveled a residential area. This just after a Russian drone strike also killed at least 5 people in Kharkiv overnight. The latest attacks come despite U.S. efforts to broker a ceasefire between both sides. So far, Russia has rejected that proposal as Ukraine and its allies accuse Moscow of stalling negotiations. South Korea's suspended President Yoon Suk-yeol has been removed from office after the country's constitutional court voted unanimously to uphold his impeachment. The court ruled Yoon abused his power in December when he declared martial law. South Koreans will now elect a new leader. But as Redmond Shannon reports, the divisions within the country will take longer to heal.
Opponents of President Yoon Suk-yeol had waited 4 months for this. A president thrown out of office for just the second time in South Korean history. Some mocking his demise with funeral ribbons. I am so happy and overwhelmed. I think it is a victory of democracy, said this woman. Last December, Yoon briefly declared martial law before lawmakers forced their way into Parliament to suspend the move. Yoon said he was trying to protect the country from what he said were anti-state forces that sympathized with North Korea. He never produced evidence for those allegations. The Constitutional Court's decision was unanimous.
These acts violate the constitutional order and seriously jeopardize the stability of the Democratic Republic.
But many Koreans supported Yoon to the end, devastated by Friday's ruling. I can never accept this. This is not a proper country, says this man. In a statement, Yoon expressed regret at the outcome, but not for his actions. There will be an election within 60 days. The winner may be asked to consider constitutional changes to prevent this from happening again.
For a long time, one of the major concerns with the South Korean presidency has been that the South Korean president has a lot of power compared to other democratic countries.
Yoon is awaiting a criminal trial for insurrection. If found guilty, he faces life in prison or even the death penalty, although that sentence is seen as unlikely. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Ahead, storm chaos and a lengthy cleanup on both sides of the border, and the number of people still without power.
Great to see you, my friend. How are you?
Ontario Premier Doug Ford visited some of the thousands still affected by prolonged power outages following last weekend's powerful ice storm. About 1 million people were cut off by what's being described as one of the worst ice storms to hit the province in nearly 30 years. More than 120,000 people were still without power as of this afternoon. A major cleanup is underway in parts of the central and eastern U.S. Intense spring storms and tornadoes ripped across several states, flattening homes and businesses and washing out roads. At least 8 people were killed. In Missouri and Arkansas, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is helping people prepare for extreme flooding as the nasty weather shifts east. Forecasters say up to 3 million people are at risk. Next, a common foe, how a shift in the global economy is prompting fear and laughter. The end of this business week couldn't come soon enough for many. The U.S. tariffs and counter tariffs have some economists warning of a global recession. Eric Sorensen takes stock of what has changed and how many are turning to humor to cope.
China, 67%. That's tariffs.
They say misery loves company, and Canadians can only welcome the rest of the world to our world this week.
A discounted reciprocal tariff of 34%. I think In other words, they charge us, we charge them less.
Except experts can't make sense of it.
I mean, that formula is a formula that would have been laughed at in high school if you presented to your teacher.
But they're not laughing on Wall Street.
A very ugly day for the markets.
Try as they might to make light on late night.
The Dow Jones nosedived 1,700 points. So, worst day for our economy since COVID. Just a little reminder, this time, he's the disease.
Trump apparently applied tariffs to an island inhabited by penguins, and the internet couldn't resist.
Why did the President of the United States decide to put a 10% tariff on these uninhabited islands? Theories vary.
But it is serious.
A trade war is in nobody's interest.
Canada at least has potential new partners in the fight who are just as puzzled as we are.
The global economy will massively suffer.
That's my message to Europeans. The relationship with the U.S. will never be the same.
It's so sad and unnecessary. In Washington, some Republicans are quietly backing Democrats, standing up for their neighbor.
Canada is a friend, not an adversary. Canada is a sovereign nation, not a 51st state.
You can only hope that Trump biting off a trade war against everyone will bring it to an end more quickly.
Donald Trump announced sweeping tariffs across the entire globe. Asia, South America, Narnia, Arendelle, Wakanda, Bachelor Nation.
And don't forget the penguins. What's the old expression? If you didn't laugh, you'd cry. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
And that is Global National for this Friday night. I'm Colleen Christie. Tonight's Your Canada showcases a patriotic snowman in St. John's, Newfoundland, a springtime shot in Burlington, Ontario, and the flag flying in front of the mountains in Canmore, Alberta. Please keep sending your pictures of Canadian pride to Global National at globalnews.ca. Thanks for watching. Hope you'll join us again tomorrow. Have a great night.